Hello everybody, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar. Can I just check firstly that everyone can hear me firstly, and also see the first screen there with DJI Matrice 300 drones for public safety, and potentially I think my webcam might be on as well, so you might be able to see me on the screen there as well. Okay, brilliant. Looks like the audio and video is working fine. So we're just going to give it another minute or two because there's still quite a few people popping into the attendees. So I'm going to give it 2 or 3 minutes and then we'll get started. Right, okay, I think everyone's joined that's going to join this afternoon. So once again, thank you very much for joining us for this webinar, a spotlight on the Matrice 300, the DJI drone, specifically looking at the public safety angle of use, so use within police, fire and search and rescue. We're going to work through some of the specifications on the drone, but mainly we're going to focus on why they are important and address some of the elephants in the room, some of the issues that have been reported with previous models and how this addresses them. So by the end of this webinar, if you're a public safety organization, you should have a better idea of whether this is the right platform for you to move forward with. We have got joining us today alongside myself, Sam Denniff, we've got Perry from Norfolk Fire. So Perry is going to join me towards the end of the webinar, and we're going to do a quick live Q&A to give us an insight into why these, as I've said, why these factors are actually important for emergency services and why this could be a very useful platform. So I'll introduce Perry a bit later on, and then we'll run through some questions once we've gone through the presentation. So my name's Sam Denniff. I've been working in the drone industry for about 5 years now, mainly working with public safety and with military. So we work with a huge range of organisations. Ministry of Defence is one of the largest ones, but also 25 plus police forces, 20 plus fire services across the UK. And then some specialist areas like air accident investigation, MOD policing, those kind of areas as well. So Copters as a company was formed in 2016. The company came from Martech Marine, which was a marine engineering company based in Rotherham, developed in 1999. They saw a niche for drone use in that area. And then from there, we developed Copters as a organization that revolutionizes companies using drones. So we supply equipment, software, training, support, consultancy for larger enterprise level organizations. A big part of that is survey, inspection, utilities, critical infrastructure, but obviously also a massive section is emergency services and defence as well. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to have a quick look at how drones are used in public safety. We'll keep that fairly brief because it's something we do more detailed webinars on. Then we'll look at what the Matrice 300 is, some of the mission critical features, the benefits of the drone as well. We'll look at where the Matrice 300 might fit into your drone team. So whether it's from a police angle, fire angle, search and rescue, any of those areas, how the Matrice 300 will fit into those areas. We'll look at what your options are. So with a drone like the Matrice 300, it's not just get the system out of the box and start flying. There's a huge range of payloads, there's a range of batteries, controllers, all that kind of stuff, not to mention the training, the support, the software as well. So we'll just take a look at some examples of how you can configure it and sort of run through what the best options will be so you know what to look for. Of course, we'll mention how Copters can help you. So we'll run through what we do that's maybe different to some other companies in terms of support when you look at a drone like this. And also we'll do this Q&A with Perry Smith from Norfolk Fire. So as I said, Perry will give us a bit more of a real world example of some questions that you guys might have and just tie in nicely with the end users of this equipment, which is what it's all about. Okay, so firstly, we'll just look at some drone applications. So one of the main ones within emergency services, within public safety, is search and rescue. So this tends to be a mix of pre-planned and spontaneous operations. And what you'll see throughout this is that I kind of split drone operations within public safety down into those two categories. So you've got, on the one side, your pre-planned missions, which is what the Matrice 300 falls into. Larger systems take a bit longer to set up, but have much more capability. And then you've got your spontaneous or short-range recon SRR drones, or quick response drones, whatever you want to call them. The smaller stuff like the DJI Mavics, the Parrot and Affys, which can be launched very quickly, cover not quite as much ground, have limited capability, but are more agile, quicker to deploy, easier to operate as well. So search and rescue, it tends to be more that second category. Smaller drones, easier to launch, easier to carry. The larger systems are only if it's a protracted search or a pre-planned search for someone that's missing. That's when you might bring in the larger system. Another category is emergency response. That tends to be spontaneous. That tends to be the smaller, again, the short range recon, the quick response drones. And that's stuff like RTCs, armed crime, that kind of stuff where you want to get a drone in the air as quickly as possible and use it for observation effectively. Then you've got situational appraisal, and that's where something like the Matrice 300 really comes into its own. So longer protracted events where you want larger, more comprehensive systems. So these, for example, will be events like fires, for example, longer burning fires, demonstrations, public demonstrations, football matches, events of that nature, where you've got time to plan and deploy a larger, more capable system. That's going to give you much more capability than one of the smaller, quick to launch drones. With those as well, reliability, safety, confidence in the platform are really important. They're the ones that tend to involve members of the public that aren't necessarily involved in whatever action you're taking. So safety is absolutely key. And then there's reconnaissance as well. A lot of this is pre-planned, similar to situational appraisal. Some of it moves into the quick response stuff when it's tracking targets, following people that need to be followed, that kind of stuff. But yeah, these are the four main categories.
Sorry, Sam, can I just interrupt? I'm not sure you're sharing your screen properly. Do you just want to share it again? It's stuck on the
can
first
do if it's not coming
slide.
through. No problem. Let me just refresh it, see if we can see this slide. I don't think you've missed much if it haven't, because this is only the second slide. So is that changed now to drone applications?
Yep.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Hayley. Good spot. So yeah, I think we just missed what we covered today. We ran through there, and then we're on to drone applications. Okay, brilliant. So just a few quotes here from some drone users within emergency services. So we've got Sean from West Yorkshire Police. We wanted a remote vehicle that could get into areas and reduce risk to officers whilst being able to explore and pass back intelligence. Tom from Devon and Cornwall Police. Drones have had a real impact on policing in the UK. It's given us much better situational awareness to incidents and made things a lot safer for our officers. And then you've got Perry himself, who we're going to hear from later. In the fire service, we use drones mainly for situational awareness, giving us a good overview of an incident. We use thermal imaging cameras to find hotspots and see real-time developments of the fire. So you can see here the main things that emergency services are concentrating on is simply just gathering data, gathering intelligence, and then using that either at the time to act on that data, or recording it and using it for evidence, or using it for training purposes at a later date. So all these things, huge benefits, and at the same time, it's improving safety, saving money, and saving time, which is always important. Now we're going to get into the detail on the Matrice 300. So firstly here, we've got a little overview of some of the technical details of the Matrice 300, which I'm sure most of you, if you've done a bit of reading into the system, have probably already seen. So the main takeaway points from this are the upgrades from older systems that fit into this category. So firstly there, you've got a huge transmission range. Now that's not massively important in this country because no one's really flying out to these distances. What that more means is just there's a level of security in terms of the connection. You know that connection's really strong. If it can work at 15 kilometers, how good's it going to be at 500 meters? It is more the gist of that. And up to 2 kilometers, if you're doing extended line of sight flights, you know you're not going to have any issues with connection. It's a bit like having a car that can do 200 miles an hour. Not to say you're going to go to that speed, but you know that going 0 to 70, it's going to be very quick and not have to work too hard to get to that point. You've then got the extended flight time, which we'll take a look at with the payloads that we're seeing used more by emergency services on the next couple of slides. But up to 55 minutes is the quoted flight time. Now, obviously, that's in ideal conditions, as manufacturers always do, with a payload and in a bit of wind and a bit of rain and moving the drone around a bit. You may be looking at sort of 40 minutes as a more realistic time. Still very good compared to other platforms. Still, to be honest, leading the way. There's nothing else really, certainly of this size and of this ability, that can do that level of flight time with a decent amount of payloads. You've then got a few safety features that are on here. So 6-dimensional sensing and positioning, and we'll go into the safety features a bit more later. Primary flight display, an IP45 rating, so a much higher IP rating than, for example, the Matrice 210, and a high operating temperature as well, -20 to +50, which again, in this country, it might have felt like it in the past few days, but we're not really getting down to -20 and not really getting anywhere near +50. So again, it's good to know it'll operate in those extremes, but not something that's critical for our use in the UK. You've then got the health management system on the drone as well, and you've got the hot swappable batteries. Now, the hot swappable batteries actually means you can keep the drone operational with one battery in. So you can land the drone, take one battery out, keep the drone switched on, put another battery in, take one out, put another one in, and get it in the air. So switching the batteries, you don't actually have to power down the drone at all. You can keep it running while you switch batteries. So again, DJI have just thought about minimizing downtime, and that's why it's suited so well to this public safety sector. Everything's been done towards minimizing downtime, improving safety. Those are the two main key elements for this. You can mount a very wide range of payloads onto the Matrice 300. You can mount up to 3 at once. To be honest, within public safety, there's never really, I don't think, going to be a requirement to mount 3 payloads at any one time, partly because the H20T, a camera which again we'll look at in a bit more detail, is so good that it fulfills a lot of the roles that you'd get from other cameras. So the H20T is the main camera we'll have on the drone system, which is the one you can see on these pictures on the first 2 cameras. And then you can mount something like a spotlight next to that. You could mount another visual camera on top, like a really high-powered zoom camera. You could mount the spotlight on top. But it's very mix and match. You can have a wide range of payloads, and you can know you're doing a job that needs the high-res thermal, so mount that camera. You can have survey-grade cameras, which you can mount for use on separate missions. So basically, this platform's a bit of a one-size-fits-all, which obviously is good for budgeting, saving money when you're spending a lot on a large system. If you can justify that by saying, well, it may be expensive, but it covers pretty much everything we need to do within this pre-planned mission sector. Here's a look at the flight time, and the key thing here is to look at where you see the H20T camera. So with that payload, you're looking at 43 minutes flight time. As I said, you take a few minutes off, maybe 10% for that, just for operational differences, because this is always in ideal conditions. So just under 40 minutes is real world what you're going to get. But if any of you are using Matrice 210s, for example, you'll know it's significantly less than that. Even things like the Mavic Enterprise Dual, the Parrot and Nafi Thermal, those kind of drones, they're all stuck at around 25 minutes. Again, in the real world, they'll probably say half an hour, 31, 32 minutes. Real world, about 25. So this is right up there. It may only be an extra 10 minutes. Obviously, that can make a huge difference. But with those hot swap batteries as well, it's going to save a lot of downtime with operations with payloads of that weight. And the good thing is as well, even loaded up to its full payload weight, so even with 2.6, 2.7 kilos of weight on the drone, you're still going to get around that half an hour, 25 minutes to half an hour flight time. This is the sort of unsung hero of the Matrice 300 launch, which came last year. So the drone itself is fantastic. It's a really good platform, but the cameras are what have really made the difference. The H20T in particular is such a huge jump up in camera capability. Combining that with the drone is what's changing the way they can be used. So this sensor has 4 separate lenses, which you can see on the picture on the right, the H20T. You've got a really high resolution visual camera for zoom. You've got a wide angle lens camera, that's 12 megapixels, kind of the equivalent to the camera on the Mavic Enterprise Dual. You've then got a laser rangefinder up to 1200 meters. That's referred to there as the LRF. And then you've got a high resolution thermal, so 640 by 512 pixel radiometric thermal camera, 30 hertz refresh rate. So the equivalent of the old XT2, Zemu's XT2, with a much higher resolution visual camera and a really high powered zoom. That zoom camera will zoom into 200 times that level. And with that level of zoom, you can pick out details on people, you can pick out registration plates from 300, 400, 500 meters. We've tracked and followed vehicles from a distance of over half a kilometer with this camera in some pretty poor conditions as well. So the capabilities are massive in public safety. And just to focus on that H20T, because you're going to see that's part of what we're seeing is so popular with this system. Firstly, it's got an IP44 rating. So the drone has IP45. That means it can be sprayed with water from any angle, the drone can. Camera's IP44, so slightly less, but obviously the camera in most cases is mounted under the drone, so it does have its own slight level of protection. So any rain conditions aside from hurricane rain effectively, The M300 can fly in those conditions. DJI have done some testing in some really harsh conditions, and that IP45 rating guarantees it to be able to fly in rain from any angle effectively. Going back to the camera then, you've got that 200 times zoom on the visual camera, 23 times of that is optical zoom, so that's why the resolution is so good. The visual camera, you've got that wide field of view, so you can be zoomed in really far on a target, flick back instantly to the wide field of view and get bearings back that way. The laser rangefinder kind of speaks for itself, accuracy up to 0.2 of a meter at certain distances. And then the thermal camera, as I said, really high resolution, 30 Hz refresh rate, 640 by 512 thermal, and it's got radiometric capability for the more sort of inspection-based use cases for this sensor as well. So now I want to look at where the Matrice 300 fits into public safety in terms of a platform. Some of the things that the Matrice 300 has as features are definitely aimed more towards the inspection-based market. So there are things that this drone has which potentially are almost overkill within public safety. So you can use AI to identify and capture data, return to that point repeatedly for inspection-based work. You can also tap to calculate coordinates of something you're inspecting. So you can tap and it will give you the grid reference. And you can use smart track and auto zoom on areas while you're inspecting them. What we've found, however, is these features are actually very useful within public safety as well. As you can imagine, being able to tap on a target and get exact coordinates at any time, and then feed that back to a command center or someone that's reporting back to then get reports on what to do from there. Super useful. And so is the smart track. If you can tap on a vehicle, the camera will auto zoom, pan, and follow that vehicle wherever it's going, or those people. Very obvious use cases for public safety there as well. So some of these inspection-based softwares actually fit really well with public safety and emergency service use. Because of this, and because of the payloads, it can be used on a really wide range of applications. Because it's built with that inspection in mind as well as public safety, if you're looking at using it for mapping road traffic collisions, if you're using it for search and rescue or searching a site, because of, again, the high resolution cameras, searching a site for discarded evidence, or mapping, say, an area where there's been a fire, mapping the damage, so you've got it on record for insurance and for reporting back what happened during a mission. So all the post-incident uses, because of the range of sensors, are massively upgraded. Again, because of this IP rating, it's as close at the moment as you can get to sort of a drone you can fly in all conditions. There is going to be conditions where it's, when it's super heavy rain, really strong wind, maybe thunder and lightning, all that kind of stuff. Storm conditions, where maybe you're going to want to think twice, but most conditions you're going to be able to fly this system in. You've got those longer flight times, and you've got a huge amount of safety and redundancy features. And I know that there's going to be questions when we get to the end on the safety side and what DJI have done to make sure there's not the issues with this there was with previous models. So we can go into that in a bit more detail. We'll circle back round to it in the Q&A and work through those the features that are in there for the 300. You've also got the fact that the payloads are far greater resolution and image quality. So as I said, the H20T is such a high level camera that it can be used in such a wide range of applications. Yes, the initial cost is fairly expensive compared to stuff like Mavics and smaller drones, but the capability is just greatly increased. This is just a look at what platforms it will probably replace within a police force or a fire service. So drones such as the Area and Sky Ranger, these big expensive systems that were almost military spec, are brilliant at what they do. They're built specifically for public safety, which is a huge plus. But they're incredibly expensive, and I think what people are realizing is that they don't really add much to what the Matrice 300 does. In fact, the 300 is better because it's more diverse. And the tick boxes for stuff like the Area and Sky Ranger and various other sort of more bespoke, smaller company-based systems that are here in the UK, the benefits they had, the higher IP rating, some of the sensor quality, all that kind of stuff, are just massively outweighed now by the 300. Obviously, it's going to replace the 200 series. So if you work in an organization that are using the Matrice 200, this is now going to come in and replace that. It's a complete no-brainer. The extra IP rating, the longer flight time, the greater range of payloads, the greater quality of that range of payloads, the future proofing, the safety features, it's a huge jump up. The Inspire series as well, if you're flying Inspire 1s, Inspire 2s, any drones of that sort of class, unique H520s, various other drones within that category, this is going to replace those drones at some stage, and it has been replacing them for the best part of a year now. So a lot of these, the vast majority of these that we sell, are going into police forces, fire services, security organizations, because of the applications that they have. So what I want to look at now, before we move on to involve Perry and get some questions, is basically building a package for the Matrice 300, because this is a question that I get now probably more than anything else. Probably the first question I get is around the safety aspect. The second one is, there's so many options. What do we need? How do we package this together to get a system where we're not going to be coming back to you and saying, oh, we forgot to get this, we now need this. We've already had our budget approved and now we've realized we need some more batteries or whatever else it may be. So what you need to look at initially is obviously the drone system in itself. And the great thing with the Matrice 300 is, as a package, you get the drone, you get spare props, you get a charging station like a charger case, you get a big tough Pelly carry case for the drone, you get all the bits and pieces, ancillaries, wires, chargers, all that kind of stuff that you need as part of the package. You then add in your dual downward gimbal. You can add in the upward gimbal. Within public safety, it's not quite as important. So you add in that dual downward gimbal. The drone itself comes with 2 batteries. So you add in, we normally say, a further 3 sets, and that gives you 8 batteries. So 4 pairs of TB60 batteries in total, because it runs off 2 batteries. And that gives you 4 pairs that then fit into the case of the drone. And you're getting at least 2 hours of flight time from that, more like 3. Really, so a really good flight time from having 4 sets of batteries. In terms of payloads, as I said, the H20T is pretty much essential. I've got to say, it's my opinion that there is no point buying a Matrice 300 without getting the H20T, because that camera is what makes this drone so good. So you should start with the Matrice 300 and the H20T. That should be your bread and butter. From there, you add in your spare batteries. From there, you might add in a second controller. So it comes with one, the Smart Controller Enterprise. You can add a second controller and then control the payloads with that one. And the great thing is you can switch between the 2 immediately. There's no faffing around. So if you've got a pilot operating and they, for any reason, have to leave the drone, they don't have to run and give the control over to someone else. The camera operator can immediately request control and take control of the drone and start flying from there, and vice versa as well. You then might look at things like, there's a spotlight system for the drone, a really high power spotlight. There's the survey grade payloads. There's a LiDAR based module for the system now. There's the really high resolution visual camera form mapping, and that's the L1 and the P1, those 2 new cameras. So you can add those in as well. What we're seeing more is they're being added in at a later stage. So you'll start with the drone and the H20T, maybe the spotlight. You'll add in your second controller, your spare batteries. From there, potentially, you'll come back in the future and add in a survey grade payload. There, you then want to look at the support package you want to build into the drone. So this is not an off-the-shelf piece of kit. I definitely wouldn't recommend just finding this on Amazon, eBay, buying one secondhand, buying one from an online retailer, and then taking it out and trying to fly it. You'll get it off the ground because it's DJI. We all know how easy they are to use, how user-friendly they are, but you'll miss so much of the capability by not getting the proper training and the proper support. So one thing to look at is Enterprise Shield Plus. That's DJI's own sort of priority level support package. You can add that in and get unlimited replacements of the drone if there's any issues at all, whether that's pilot error or non-pilot error. So if you don't quite trust your guys that are flying it, that might be a really good option. You want to ask if you're getting an extended warranty, which is something we add in with our packages. You definitely want to look at training sessions with the equipment, no matter how experienced you are with other drones that might be similar. Getting a quick handover session with an instructor is very, very valuable, because you're just not going to get the capability from it if you're not doing that. You also want to look at the servicing and support. Are you getting it serviced every 6 months or every X flight hours? Are you getting it maintained properly? You know, you wouldn't take a car and drive it for 2 years without ever checking, checking that it's okay, without ever taking it in for a service, without ever having, any sort of diagnostics done to it at all. And you've got to think of it, to the nth degree, way more than that, because if a car breaks down, it's not the end of the world. If this breaks down, it falls out of the sky. So having that servicing and support is really important. And then the only other thing is further training. So not just the training session, but do you understand the data that you're getting from the drone? Do you understand the basics of aerial thermography? Do you understand how to use mapping software? If that's something you want to do, you're more than welcome to just have a go at it, get some software and see if you can work it out. But I'd definitely recommend looking at a training session on how to use it. And obviously there's the training, the GVC and the A2 CFC as they're now called. So what was the PFCO. So just making sure you've got the right qualifications to operate the kit. So this here gives you an idea of what a package with the Matrice 300 will look like. So what you can see there on the hardware, the top section, is what comes with the drone as standard. So all the equipment you'll get with a drone package. You can then see the additional batteries, a secondary controller, the H20 camera, and then the care package for both the drone and the camera system. So that's the kind of package you'd be looking at as a public safety organisation. It's going to cost you around sort of from 20 to about 20 to 23,000 pounds as a full package for that level of equipment, depending on how you configure it and what you might add in and take away. From there, you can add in, as we said, the spotlight. You can add in further payloads. You can take out a few batteries to reduce the price. You could take out the slave controller if you want to keep the price down initially. Plenty of options there, but that gives you an idea of sort of what to go to your boss and ask for if you're looking at this system. And then below it there, that's the support that we give or that we recommend as standard with this package. So again, if you do want to strip the support out, you can, but I'd strongly recommend against that. Everything we've put in there is based on customer feedback and is based on learning the hard way when customers say, well, we've been using the drone for 6 months and the thermal camera's rubbish. And we say, well, why is it rubbish? Oh, because we can't use it when it's a bit warm and a bit sunny because the data's really poor. And then they do a thermal course, a day-long thermal course. They realize there's a few tweaks they can do in the system and it'll work absolutely fine. Same things with mapping and same things with the training session and the support and servicing as well. So all that's really important in the stuff we build into the package we do. And then you've got Enterprise Shield Plus, which can be added in for about £2,600 for both the camera and the drone as part of the package as well. So that gives you a better idea, hopefully, of sort of what you're looking at for the equipment when you're putting that to one side. And as we've gone through there is a huge range of support that we offer if this is something you're looking at. So that extended warranty is something we always offer, along with the ongoing tech support and servicing every 6 months. We make sure you get that handover from an expert instructor, and we make sure you get use of our approved repair centre as well. Things inevitably go wrong with this equipment. More often than not, it's little things like it falling over in a storeroom, or a police officer or whoever unpacks it rather rough-handedly and snaps something, and it just needs a quick repair. But we're always there to do those repairs and service the drones as best we can. I think from there, we'll move on to a bit of a Q&A, and I'm sure we'll touch on the safety features, which I wanted to talk about in a bit more detail. So, Perry, can you hear me okay?
We're about to find out, I think. Can you hear me, Sam?
Yes, I've got you loud and clear.
Ah, excellent. Yeah, well, first, thank you very much for that, because that was really informative, to the point where I almost don't need to ask you any questions, I think.
Well, I'm sure there's a few other people who will have asked questions as well within the chat. the chat window, so we'll definitely run through those. But yeah, I mean, Perry, based on your experience within sort of Norfolk Fire's, looking at the technical side of their drone team, and looking at the next steps, is there anything that you'd need to know to then be confident that this would sort of be the system to go for, or what to look at?
Yeah, I think from what you've said there, it's definitely looking like the most suitable drone for us. So where we are now is we've been live since June 2018, I think is when we went live, thereabouts, so a couple of years, just a bit more than. And in that time, we've obviously flown quite a lot of missions. We're doing about 80 odd calls a year, between 80 and 100. A lot of those are MISPers, because we work collaboratively with the police. We have been working closely with them since we went live back in 2018. So far, it's all gone pretty well, I think. We've had some really good successes, but we've been using a DJI Inspire model, and we were going to upgrade to the 210 about a year ago, and the reason we didn't, this is bringing me around to the first question, was mainly because of all the crashes that were happening around the country, the issues that were happening, Sam. So I think my first question would be to do with that. What have DJI done basically to try and stop that from happening again, and what degree of confidence do you think we'll be able to have in this machine going forward?
Yeah, that's to be honest, that's as I said, one of the main questions we get asked, and it is just that peace of mind, isn't it, that you know the kit's going to do its job that you want it to do. The 210 issue, the Matrice 210 issue was to do with moisture ingress. So effectively, what was happening was the drones were being flown in poor conditions, in rain. They were being stored. And the moisture was working its way effectively into the motors, and then it was shorting the ESCs. So there was propulsion errors in one motor, and the drone would fall from the sky. And there was quite a few. I think you'll agree with me there, Perry. There was quite a few incidents across police and fire, maybe disproportionately so within police and fire compared to the sort of wider commercial applications of the drone, which obviously made it more high profile within that world. So the main things that DJI have done, and there are some features that it carries over from the 210 and some that are new for the 300. So firstly, the ones that it's carried over, they have the 6-way collision avoidance system, which is something that now the Mavics and pretty much everything have. They have that health management system, so you can see live if there is any issues, a bit like modern cars will tell you if there's tire pressure deflating or anything like that. It will alert you immediately if there's any issues. It does have that higher IP rating. So the Matrice 210 was IP43. This is IP45. So it's 2 steps up in terms of water ingress. So it just means it can take moisture from any direction. And the 210, if moisture worked its way under and up into the motors, that's what would cause the issues. And if you look at a picture of the Matrice 300 compared to the 210, you'll see that the 300 has inverted motors. So the props are underneath the motor section, whereas the 210 is more like other standard drones, it's above. And this is effectively to wick any moisture that does work its way in straight out of the drone system. So this is a purposeful physical design to protect whatever's mounted inside those motors from any sort of water ingress. The main 2 things that DJI have done, however, that overcome this problem, the first one is that the ESCs are now in the drone body. So whereas they used to be in the arms, in the motors, in the 210, and they were getting shorted by moisture, they're now mounted inside the drone system, which is completely sealed. So there's no chance of moisture working its way into them. Second one, and probably the most impressive, is that the 300 actually has a emergency landing system. So if one propeller fails, the drone will, rather than plummet out the sky like every other drone in the market that a quadcopter will do, you'll remain in some level of control. The drone will descend. You'll be able to move laterally. You'll be able to move it from side to side and forwards and backwards. As it's coming down, The landing will be heavy, so don't be surprised if it damages some of the landing gear. Don't be surprised if the drone maybe tips over when it hits the ground. But it allows you to steer that away from anyone or anything that's underneath the drone, and also in most cases save that expensive camera you've got mounted underneath, and you'll be sending it back to us for a repair that will cost a couple of £100, rather than sending it back to us in a cardboard box that jangles a lot as it's shipped into the office. So that's a huge step up. So because the issue was caused by one motor failing, and now if one motor fails, the drone will land and is controllable, I think we can say with a high degree of confidence that the 300 won't suffer the same issues the 210 did. And so far, I'm happy to say, of all the ones that we've supplied, we've not had any back for non-pilot error-based issues. So any we've had back have been admitted to have been crashed by the pilots. So no failures or issues on that side. So hopefully that sort of covers that angle, Perry.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, because you even answered one of my other questions, which was why the rotor's upside down on this. Yeah, that's perfect. You answered it. Okay, so my next question was about the size of the screen, Sam, because it is a bit smaller, and with some of us getting older, looking at a small screen that's smaller than our iPad Mini 4s that we use with the Inspire at the moment, is that a problem, do you think, for pilots, that they're going to be straining to see, because you've got quite a lot of information on that screen as well, I've noticed, to take that in and still see what you're looking at, bearing in mind that what we're primarily using them for is MISPAs and where you're trying to stare quite hard at the screen quite often, and fires obviously as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things on that. The first one is they are small screens, so I think they're 5.5 or 6 inches. The monitors built into the Smart Controller Enterprise, they are very, very high resolution. They're 4K screens and they're ultra bright, so the detail is really good. If you are having issues in terms of sort of seeing the data that's in front of you, there is a tablet mount for the screen, and there is the option to route via HDMI into or USB into a separate tablet device if that's what you want to do. So you can actually have effectively 2 screens on one controller. The other option would be to live stream that data using something like DJI Flight Hub, or just a HDMI out into a separate larger tablet or laptop or television screen, and have someone separate from the pilot who's watching that in something like a MISPA search, and then they can pick up on the detail they're looking for. So yeah, it's definitely something that it's been raised before. It's a really good point, and I think that the quickest fix, the best fix, is to just simply mount your another tablet onto the controller if that's what you need to do.
Okay, lovely, thanks. You mentioned the second gimbal, and you say that attaches onto the top? I wasn't quite clear how that went on. And do you therefore have to buy it separately? And if so, how much is it? And also that spotlight, is that available as well? And how much does that cost if it is?
Yeah. So the drone as standard, you tend to have the dual downward gimbal, but not the top gimbal. It is an additional cost. I think it's about 100. Top of my head, I think it's £136. That's the figure that's springing to mind, but it's around that sort of 150-ish pounds for that top tablet.
Okay.
The spotlight, yeah, that's available. They're about £1,700 for the spotlight to mount onto the system. That's the Z15 spotlight, that's called, and that's fully controllable for the drone camera, the drone controller as well. So you can spin that around and point it in certain directions as well.
Okay, lovely. Yeah, got that.
We're getting a few other questions through on the chat as well, so we can. I don't know if you've got any more, Perry, or we can jump into some of these.
No, I think you answered everything, because I was going to ask about the batteries and how many you recommended to keep it flying sort of more or less continuously. So that was excellent. And you've been through the safety features that I was concerned with. So no, that's really good. I'll get some questions from the floor. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, definitely. No, brilliant. And as I said, that's one of the things we get asked really frequently, which sometimes it's hard to answer is how should we configure the package when we're looking at the drone. So yeah, hopefully that gave some ideas of certainly that's based on what we see people ask for within the sector. So it makes sense to sort of duplicate that package. So if we look at some of the questions we've had come through. So it looks like there's been some excellent improvements from your experience. Where is there still room for improvements, or what are the weaknesses? That's a really tricky question, because obviously whenever something new comes out, you think this is amazing and it's never going to be beaten. And it always looks like the pinnacle of technology until the next drone comes out that betters it. I think a great example of that is the fact that we've just had the launch of the Mavic Enterprise Advanced, the new Mavic. And that's actually got the same, not quite the same sensor, but the same resolution on the thermal camera as this Matrice 300, the H20T camera has. And it's a drone that's this big. That's a huge jump up. Obviously, there's massive downsides compared to the M300. You can't mount this wide range of payloads. There's no IP rating. The flight time's shorter. But that's kind of the way the industry's heading, is you're now being able to get higher resolution, more powerful sensors on much smaller drone platforms. So, I mean, maybe I'd say less how the M300's next iteration will be better, but certainly the next iteration of DJI drones would be a smaller, more compact system that has some form of IP rating, like the Parrot Anafi drones, like the way the Parrot Anafi USA has gone. That would be something which would be really good to see, and I think really welcomed within public safety. So we've got, I've never flown before, could I operate an M300? You definitely could. You definitely could with the right training. If you've not flown anything before, we would be very reluctant to just send you one out and just let you crack on with it. We'd strongly recommend a certain level of training. We'd want to get you through the GVC training course. We'd want to get you some bespoke pilot training, probably some level of thermography training as well. So that'd be a case of putting together basically a training plan for getting up and running with the drone. And just because you could operate it doesn't mean it's necessarily the best option. It might be better in that case to start with something smaller like a Mavic and build up with the end in mind of a larger system. But it depends on what you're looking to do. Will DJI offer a speaker system? So I don't believe DJI offer a speaker system, but there is one like a third-party option speaker system, which I believe we can offer. So yeah, because the 300, they've opened up the SDK, the software development kits. Third parties are building spotlights and speakers and drop boxes and all kinds of interesting payloads. Those are, yes, spotlight and speaker are the two key ones. But it's definitely, there definitely is those options out there in the market. How will the legacies categorizations impact on the M300? In my opinion, yeah, that's one which, again, no one really fully knows the answer to this. To be fair to the manufacturers, to be fair to DJI, what they've said is that they will make sure their drones are able to be used after that switchover date into the categorization. They've not said exactly how they're going to do that, because I don't think anyone really knows. But they've all but guaranteed that they'll make sure they're going to be operable and fit into the correct category at that stage. Can the M300 be operated in a tether system? Yes, there are tether systems available. Didn't really want to touch on it too much within this presentation, just because it's quite a niche and fairly expensive piece of kit, but that's definitely an option as well. How quickly do the batteries charge? I believe it's 90 minutes for batteries within the charging station. There is a quick charge option within that as well, which I think is 45 minutes. Will the RTK system pair with the DRTK2? Will this higher grade information be patched into any pictures taken with the M300? Yeah, so the RTK system is an interesting one, and that's a glaring omission from this presentation. Is I've left the RTK, the survey side, the mapping side, sort of off to the edge for this one. just because it doesn't really fit at this stage with public safety use. It may well in the future, and we are kind of moving that way, but it's not really what I wanted to focus on within the world of public safety. There is the RTK option out there. Depending on what kind of mapping work you're looking to do, there might be better options in terms of better drones that can be used for mapping systems. Asking working from local government, asking of us a loudspeaker. So yeah, I think we've covered that one. There is a loudspeaker option available. Feel free to, if I just flick on a slide, should have my contact info. You've got my contact info there. Feel free to drop me an email. You'll get a follow-up from this anyway, and let me know if you're interested. And we can pull together a package that includes that loudspeaker option. Yes, it does have ADS-B receiver. If you qualify and pass GVC, is opportunities to work within search and rescue as a contractor. Perry, if you're still there, that might be an interesting one to get your opinion on, with people who want to either work with or volunteer for police, fire and search and rescue using drones.
Yeah, can you hear me, Sam?
Yeah, got you on now.
Yeah. Can you ask it again? Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, no problem. So someone just asking, and it is something we get on these webinars quite frequently, if they were to be qualified and have a drone capability of a decent level, could they volunteer as a contractor effectively within police, fire and search and rescue? Is that something that, for example, within Norfolk Fire you've done before?
It would be possible. There are voluntary organisations as well, such as lowland search and rescue organisations that do it voluntarily. When I first introduced it into Norfolk Fire and Rescue Service, we looked at the various options of contracting it out rather than necessarily training up our own pilots, and the costs of that, and I had to put that forward as a business case. And it was, yeah, there were pros and cons to both. So there's certainly, I think there's still a few fire services that aren't using drones at all, but not many now. I think most of them probably are, and I don't know of anyone that is contracting it out. But as I say, it's definitely an option. So I mean, can you think of anyone who's contracting it out, Sam?
To be honest, you've kind of said what I would have said there. It's a really tricky one to answer because not everyone's the same. I know there are a few that potentially do contract out, but it's specific. Often we don't have a capability at this time, so they're effectively on retainer, these pilots, to come in and work an operation. But as you said, the route in is more through volunteering with mountain rescue, lowland rescue, Coast Guard, RNLI, that kind of side of things, rather than working with police and fire directly. But that's not to say, it's not an option for some people.
I know the Environment Agency have been using some fire and rescue services to do it for them. And equally, organisations like that could get external contractors as well in the same way. I suppose they'll just, like everyone, be looking at budgets and how they can perhaps run it the cheapest. Yeah,
that's it. It's always going to come down to the budgeting. Unfortunately, that's it's public money, isn't it? Yeah. Everyone's accountable.
Yes.
For where every penny's spent. So it's always going to be what's the most economical option. Okay, well, there is a few other questions, but they're a bit more specific. And what I'll do is I'll pick those up after the webinar and email some answers and make a few calls. So Perry, firstly, thanks very much for joining us, and thanks for your questions.
No problem. Thank you, Sam.
No problem. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you found it useful. And as I said, any further questions, any further interest, anything else you need, drop us an email, give me a call. More than happy to help. Thank you very much for joining us.